A very good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Friday Drinks. It's not as chilly as it was last week. I think the weather is getting better, but still chilly nonetheless. And how is Rufaro? How are you feeling now?
No, much better. And I'm delighted to be celebrating a victory. I think it's the first time in a bunch of decades that the Sables have qualified for the World Cup.
Yeah, well done. Well done to Zimbabwe. Well done to the Sables.
And they played very well. It was a riveting final. Did you?
What do you think made the difference?
No, I think the coaching staff really brought the talent out of the guys. I think I could be wrong. This is just my opinion. I think we've always had talent, but the talent has never actually played to its full potential because perhaps the coach, the organization and coaching wasn't up there. And I think finally we're at a place where we've got a great coach, and I think that ZimRa is much better is much better run. It's been run really well over the last 5-10 years.
What's the average age?
I don't know.
Aaron Jani was part of the executive.
He was president for several years. So I think they made some.
Didn't get to see the team.
Yeah, sad. But that's certainly part of his legacy because at the time, he was criticized for bringing in a coach from outside, even though he's Zimbabwean.
No, but that was just Timber Mlisha, right? So we can't then take Timber Mlisha as the gold standard.
No. But I think
generally everybody supported the move.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think So it's actually a great development, and this is not the current jersey. I've had this for some years now.
Well, you're not supposed to wear it. I don't know why. The producer, why did you allow this?
It's misconduct. It's it happens. There are some employees who just used to be.
Well, did you get fired? Did you get fired?
Yeah, look. Obviously, I think his excuse was it's a happy moment for him. So if I were to fire him like right now on the spot, it would feel like I'm not celebrating the I'm not a rugby fan. I didn't even know there was some tournament that was taking place. But obviously, I picked that so many people were happy about the victory by social media posting. And I think one of our own,
so my friends,
I saw her at the airport. She was like cheering. Yeah.
So our friends at NetBank want to get us the current jersey, so we can exclude you since you don't understand and appreciate rugby.
Do you think I will really cry over that? Yeah. So it's something that I would wear just on set. After that, I'm like,
really?
What is
we didn't get him one.
Yeah. But I've always wanted. So
doesn't your son play rugby?
No, he plays basketball and football.
Okay.
Yeah. So look, I come from Kumusha, and the only sports that were there is football, volley, and
you actually had volleyball?
Yes, volleyball. So like you need to invest in anything, eh?
Okay.
You just need 2 poles and a net. If you can't get the proper
what were you good at?
Yeah, he was a bookworm. He didn't play any sport at school. This one.
Yeah.
Were you bullied?
No way. I was so smart that everyone was so afraid of me. So
or maybe you were also bigger than everybody else.
I was so smart that everybody was afraid of me. That makes no sense as far as Brown is concerned.
No.
You get bullied.
No. People don't bully smart people. I don't know the school that you went to. So if you're like, okay, so then I went for my high school in an urban area. So the culture is different. So that's where my story was going. Okay. That rugby was the thing. At that particular
and
school.
It went over your head at that particular school as well.
So I had to sort of understand it because everyone was just talking about, with this match against Plumtree, against Milton or CBC or whatever, right? And most of my mates at the school were rugby players. I think 2 of them were even in the Zim under 17. And it was a big thing at the school. And then that's when I started to know about was it the court call
It was sponsored by Kotko for the longest time, and then Dairy Board.
And they really didn't
Rugby
care much
Festival
about
at
what
PE,
I really liked, which was football. So but I've always wondered why.
But
is that?
you know the saying about rugby.
Let's hear what he's often wanted.
Is like schools rugby is such a big thing, but after
Is it?
in Zim?
Yeah,
I think it is. It is.
Let him land.
Yeah,
I want to hear what.
But then when it comes to the club rugby and the national team, I think the euphoria and the excitement dies out. Even the sponsorship.
That's why I was asking. What's the average age of our players, and what's your answer to the inquiry that Ranga has made?
Look, I think historically it was a Group A trust school phenomenon. So it was, and the government schools focused more on, or the schools for everybody else focused more on soccer. Soccer's more popular.
Football, not soccer.
No.
We're not in America. But he identifies as
yes.
American.
Oh my gosh.
No, for a minute I'd forgotten.
You know that rugby aficionados sometimes call it football. And anyway, the point I was trying to make is I think the audience that's interested in rugby has always been much smaller than the soccer audience. And I think at a club level,
the question is why is it a school rugby? It's well received, well supported, and has got a wider audience than when you get to the senior players. Then it fizzles out.
Well, it's because so firstly,
I mean the games are actually played at a small arena, Harare Sports Club. They should be playing. Do we even have a proper rugby stadium?
No, we do. Well, we don't have an exclusively rugby stadium. No, if that's what you're saying. But
that's the point.
So I think that at schoolboy level, the schools have always been very organized and well funded, and I think at the club level that structure is not there. That's a good question. I think, and it's a broader question that I think affects a lot of sports where we just don't seem to see the vibrancy at the club level that you see at schoolboy level. But I would pin it on money. Just if you're a good rugby player post school, you're much more likely to be well remunerated playing outside the country than locally. And
can't you call the players who are abroad?
So some of the players play. Some of the Sables players.
So you shouldn't really affect.
No, but I'm talking about.
He's talking about club rugby.
All
right.
Yeah. So the national side won't be affected as much. But what also tends to happen is that because Zimbabwe doesn't make the World Cup, hasn't been qualifying for such a long time, a lot of the really talented players, the incentive is for them to naturalize in the countries where they play. Like the Beast, for example, right? Okay. He's Zimbabwean, but he became a South African citizen, and he played for South Africa, and he actually has a World Cup medal, right? He would not have achieved that if he was playing for Zimbabwe, because we haven't been at the World Cup for decades. So hopefully this is a turning point in the game, and we see more success.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Well done, Sables.
Then the administrators, why don't they make it a mainstream sport? I mean, it's not too different from football in terms of the equipment wise. I mean, if you look at it at a very basic.
They don't even have a stadium.
So just make it mainstream, because if a school in Chipinge where I went, has got a football field, surely all that they have to do is just extend the goalposts.
Look, it's all about organization and structure, because Zim definitely has the talent. I remember vividly watching a Churchill PE game in 1994 that was a curtain raiser for a Sables Wales game, and Zimbabwe was competitive in that match against Wales. Today it's inconceivable to imagine Wales touring Zim, for rugby. But that's how, so the talent is there. I just think we need to nurture it to have the correct organization and structure in place. And we can be competitive at the very highest level in rugby.
Why can't we be part of the South African league?
We used to be, funny enough.
Really?
I don't know whether we continued. I know certainly before 1980, we participated in the South African League. I don't know whether that stopped immediately at independence or at some point after. But yeah, we used to. And I think at the junior boys level, Craven Week, Zim actually participates. So yeah, again, it's just
with the Whipping Boys.
Yeah, but but sometimes the really strong Zimbabwean school squads have been very competitive with the South African schools. So it's not always the case that the Zimbabwean teams are whipping boys down there. Yeah, it's about organization and structure. I think it just hasn't been there. It just hasn't been world class for a long time, and I think we're slowly coming back.
I don't know who replaced our dear departed brother Aaron Jan, but wherever you are, say
it's Tough Money Parinya.
The challenge is
it is right.
Yeah. Can you please make rugby mainstream? Even the young boys in Chipinge, in Dotito, and in Buera or parts of Zimbabwe.
We might actually.
Yeah. There might actually be better players there. There might be better players there
than football. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we've got. Yeah. And
it doesn't have to be, just a preserve for.
Yeah, the exclusive
for the exclusive.
Because I actually think that we've got a bit of talent as far as rugby is concerned than in football.
So what are key three skills that you need
if you actually think
for you to
about
play rugby to be like a good rugby player? Because chances are you find
strength,
all of them in Dotito, in Chipinge.
Strength, speed, and agility.
If you think about what cricket has achieved, because they had a very successful grassroots program that reached out to
until recently.
Yeah, well, and yeah, so I think there's probably a case study to be copied there in rugby in terms of actually getting it broadening the audience or broadening the pool of where you fish for talent. So yeah, I think the potential.
You know what? You can crucify me as much as you want, but I think that as far as football is concerned, there's a certain skill set that we just don't have. Oh, not even skill set, talent that we just don't have. I mean, when you look at the South Americans and the way they're able to just control the ball, I just haven't seen it, even in school football.
So you're saying by us you mean just Zimbabweans, because up there in West Africa.
Southern Africa.
Okay.
I think that Southern Africa, we lack the flair. There's a certain flair. Even West Africa. I would actually argue.
West Africa, my friend.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the French league, the league.
Yeah. No, I'm saying they've got a particular
it's mostly,
flair.
I would say maybe more than 60% of the players there are of either West African or North African.
Yeah. There's a certain flair. But the South Americans, you would agree with me that they've got a certain talent that unfortunately Southern Africa just doesn't have.
Yeah, so talent, but also
also football. It's now a question of size. If you look at footballers that used to play in the league, in the English league in the 90s, and the guys that play now, you have to be tall, you have to be big. We don't have that size, unfortunately, as Zimbabweans.
But not anymore. People like Lionel Messi,
he's an aberration.
Luka Modric, and whatever.
Those are
they actually
aberrations.
debunked that theory.
No, but those are aberrations.
Do you know what they were really raving about these days? They're saying shorter players are much more agile. They've got a lower center of gravity or whatever. They're the best. That's
aberration. Like Messi is an aberration. He's a freak of nature. Okay. Literally a freak of nature. He's an aberration. And then our game, it's more a strength game, right? And I don't think we just don't have. I mean, right now, if you look at just like the goalkeepers, at least 6'2", 6'3". Can you imagine that? How many, 6-footers can you find in Zimbabwe? But anyway, I digress. But I actually think that rugby...
Maybe before you go, the business side of that. Because I mean, like sports as a business, it's probably something that you need to
I think if we joined the South African leagues, just like cricket, they were part of the ICC circuit, and that actually helps because you can actually become a professional cricketer. Unfortunately, nepotism and I don't know the team selection, something has just gone horribly wrong in our cricket fraternity. I don't know.
I haven't really been following what's happening.
We've just become the whipping boys, but not for lack of talent. It's just purely how the selection is happening.
Is it not because of the quota system? Is it still in place?
Not even. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think most of the players are black, but they seem to be coming from a particular
Sports club,
and then that's been pushed, and there's a whole lot that's happening there. But we've got
there's a
reason to celebrate. And I think the Sables have done.
No, the level of corruption obviously is high. Also, it reminds me of this thing. So, my son goes to these football academies and whatever. So one day he just stopped and said, "No, I'm not going." What happens? On match day, they bring a 17-year-old to play in a under 14 team. So what's the point? And it is quite pervasive. So even the issue of the selection you're talking about.
But even when we were growing up, that was always the case.
Yeah, but
that's nothing new.
It's just demotivating.
It's baked in. It's baked in. You've got the Nigerian players in the under 19 who look closer to 30.
Oh my gosh.
Last week we had Kura, and we had a riveting discussion on real estate and construction. You were sitting by the sideways and listening in. What are your thoughts?
So last week I was a proper behind the scene guy, and I watched every second of that show. It was really, really good, and I really like the way you handled the show. And also how obviously Kura...
So am I getting a pay rise?
Yeah.
Pay at all?
Look, there's some points that you raised around, the decision making in investing in property is not a financial one. I think it explains what you are seeing right now, that when people are building, especially the clusters and all the buildings that we are coming up outside of, say, commercial structures, they're not really, the driver, especially in the Zim context, is not returns as it were. It's really value preservation, but also a lot of, I don't know if you raised the issue that there's a significant amount of money laundering. Is it a proper word to use on the show?
Yeah.
So people that are earning money in some other activities, they find the property market a good place to launder it. And on this show, we were lamenting this thing of people making money and then, investing it or using it in other countries. And I remember you even gave an example of Kenya. We were saying, okay, they also have got a very bad record in terms of corruption wise, but whatever they're doing, the funds that they generate,
they spend them there.
They spend them, yeah. So in a way, you could say, okay, we are seeing quite a number of those that have got access to money from whatever activities that they're doing, investing onto the property market. So, but the question now, something that really rang a bell in me and say, okay, so when you see institutions that are driven by return requirements or objectives, or they've got future liabilities that they have to match with assets that they're creating today, does it make sense for institutions to join that bandwagon where you're saying the investing right now is not driven by return? For me, then sort of it left me with so many questions.
Even what Kura said about the yield that you're getting, 3.75% on property, and that was high, very, very low. And I was like, why not invest in a REIT? Because I think to get a REIT is giving you 7-8%.
Why not invest on the stock market?
Why
because
not invest?
The dividend yield on Delta and Econet is probably 10%.
Yeah. So give us your learned excuse on why that's not actually happening?
I don't know, but I think one thing that I remember we raised at some event we had with the Zimbabwe Association of Pension Funds as members of the investment community is actually it's partly down to lack of knowledge. The people who are running some of these institutions, not running, for example, take an average pension fund trustee. They are not an expert in investment issues. They are probably sitting on the board because they are a member of the workers' committee, or mostly they are members of the workers' committee, or they represent an employer, and yet these are the people that are charged with the responsibility to make investment decisions, and it becomes very challenging and technical for most of them to be able to assess these investments properly. So at the end of the day, what are we seeing? Head mentality. People are just going with whatever is happening right now. There's this frenzy on converting property balance sheet into REITs. But you then also want to ask your question. What's the objective? What exactly are you trying to achieve? I think for some of them, they've really not convinced us as market players as to the objectives that they are trying to pursue. So someone like Tigere seems to have done better, but it doesn't mean that everyone who has got a properties on their balance sheet, if they just convert them into a REIT, then it's going to create value. Remember, in the late 90s into early 2000s,
that's a very good point.
We had the same issue with the ZIMRA group separately listing its property business, because I think the friends at the time was you unlock value by separately listing your property business. So Zimson did the same. Don Marsh was spun from the group company. FML did the same. And what happened towards 2009, 2010? They rebundled. So I think what my reading of that is all those decisions were not really based on properly thought out, evaluations. It's just head mentality. And I think we're also seeing the same way institutions are moving away from the stock market. You ask them, they actually don't give you any plausible reason. So you are running away from a 10% dividend yield
He seems to be making an argument.
Yeah.
That this might be a good case to start investing on the stock market. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think, the stock market right now is quite cheap. So you can get 10% dividend yield on Delta, almost 20 on Econet. The PE multiples are really at historical lows. It makes sense. But I'm going to be much more kind to capital allocators, in Zim, because certainly over the last 25 years, being a capital allocator has meant navigating a regulatory minefield, and and certainly some of the explosive events have been quite traumatic. If you think about people's experience in 2008, if you think about the experience in 2016 going into 2017, when 1-to-1 ended, in a completely free market, right? A pension fund administrator ought to have the option to just say, I'm not going to do anything clever. I'm just going to ship my money out and buy the S&P 500. 99% of fund managers globally underperform the S&P 500, right? So and it's in hard currency. It's done well over the last 60 years. It's outperformed gold, but you don't have that option, right? You've got this regulatory framework where, even now you can only ship out 15% of your capital, and that requires exchange control approval, and you have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to make that happen. And the remaining 85%, you have to own some prescribed assets. There are all these rules about what you can and can't do, and those rules, change over time. So so we can be quite harsh in terms of talking about head mentality and why are they doing, why the interest in property at such low yields or high valuations or whatever. But these are guys who are navigating this minefield of regulations where they've lost value, and certainly many of them are traumatized, right? And so, what's the alternative? They don't have good options, right? The moment actually you as
but he's saying Delta.
Yes. So
yeah, I hear everything that you're saying. You can't take your money outside. You can still invest in country.
Yes.
But the thing that you're investing in, it's yielding 3.75.
So let me be the devil's advocate.
Yes, Delta.
Let me be the devil's advocate for Delta, right? For a whole 30 days in 2021, the whole market was shut down. Right, so it didn't matter that you bought this thing at a great price and it had an exciting yield and all of these things. Your value was trapped. You couldn't trade it. Right?
No, he's saying
so. The regulatory risk is there.
No, so you're not trading.
Yeah.
All you're waiting for is your dividend. Just like you're waiting for a dividend with your property, but unfortunately, with the property, there's an added layer where you now need to manage the property itself.
No,
and you're not even experts in managing properties. And then here's Delta, and Delta is right up your alley. This is the thing that you've been doing for the last 40 years, 50 years. We would hear the argument. If Delta's dividend yield was 1%, 2%, then the idea of going into an asset class that offers 3.75% becomes attractive.
But what if you're not you're not thinking in terms of yield. You're not thinking in terms of return. You're saying, you know what? We've never seen properties being molested by regulations. They're safe. You have your title deeds, at the custodian, and you have your brick and mortar and your tenants, and that's what you really care about. Yes, you could probably earn a significantly higher return on the equities market. But you know what? I don't know what the regulations are going to look like in 6 months. They might be awful.
But you're not totally immune to the regulation, even in the property market, because they can. I think we've had instances where there were sort of price controls on rent.
Yes, and there was a talk of a property tax as well. Look, as long as you're operating in Zim, there is regulatory risk.
But just remember, we still have got the rent board. So if it's residential and you've got problems with your tenants, you can't just chuck them out without following 1, 2, 3 procedures. You can be stuck for sometimes.
It's very simple.
So the regulatory risk is still there, even in the property sector.
Gentlemen, it's very simple and straightforward. Something is not making sense, and I don't know why you guys are trying to make it make sense. Let's call it for what it is. It's not making sense. If you're on this side of the aisle and you seriously believe in property, you have a REIT that's called Tigere, that's offering 7%.
There's Revitas as well.
There's Revitas. There's Eagle. There's a number of these guys who are giving you a higher yield, 7% or more. And if you're a pension fund, that's probably what you should be doing, not you going and starting to manage, right? So if you believe in the property sector and you think that, you know what, I want the underlying asset that I can see, then you have a facility or a way in which you can do so.
Yeah.
If you still believe in higher yields, then you have Delta, you have Insco, you have Econet that are giving you a higher yield. We're not even talking about capital appreciation here. It's mind-boggling that you have somebody who's managing our pension funds, who's going in directly into a particular property investment, and they're only getting 3.75%, and that is gross. And they have no idea how to run a property portfolio.
So someone was telling me that is a chairman of one of the leading pension funds. So he was probing his investments teams on a decision that they've made. Like, guys, why did you go into this investment? And the answer was shocking. Because so and so pension fund was there. In fact, specifically, they said because Old Mutual is also there. I mean, so you've got people, and that's the justification for some of these decisions that they make. And it then brings us to the issue we always discuss of the scheming the game. Like, would you do that for your money? With your money, you are committing $500,000 simply because there's some guy who's there.
Rufaro has gotten. Yeah.
I mean, this guy loves Tesla or whatever. That's his decision. It's not like we could also say, oh, we are putting money into Tesla. Maybe I love Econet or I love something different. It's good to hear him out when he's articulating his story. If it makes sense.
At least it's
yes, it's way.
I'm just investing because
this guy is there. It's
okay, gentlemen.
Crazy.
What are you drinking today? River?
Oh yeah, I'm having whiskey. It's from the Single Malt Scotch Whisky Society of South Africa. It's called a Spiced Cosmo. I thought I'd drink something different and special to celebrate the Sables victory, and it's certainly living up to.
And it has got green and white colors, so maybe it blends well with your jazz, right?
Oh my gosh! Okay,
I'm on creature tea. I haven't had this in
like months, eh? Because there's a time when you were having Kericho tea every day.
every Friday.
So what happened? I mean, the love for East Africa is gone now, right?
I think it's waned off.
Did your trip to Rwanda have anything to do with that?
Yeah,
although Rwanda technically is in East Africa as well.
Yes. So we'll still go with Rwanda. Yeah. Perhaps we still go with East Africa,
but not necessarily Kenya.
And you?
Just a ginger concoction.
You're still suffering from this bug that's
it's
molesting all of us.
It's also quite refreshing, eh? So yeah, I mean, like I'm drinking this thing like every.
What did I
day.
start?
I'm enjoying it. So it was good that
I taught you how to make it.
At the start of winter, you actually taught Mkoma how to make it. So I just said to him, please make me some ginger tea.
So what do you make of this weather though? Because usually in August, as we get into August, it's warmer, but it's still quite nippy at night.
Yeah, they did say there was a cold front for a week, and then it's going to improve next week. So let's wait and see. But it is getting a bit nippy. Okay, gentlemen, let's talk about the breaking news, which is RBZ gets ready for sole ZiG use. This will see local currency paying for fuel, passports, and everything else, and getting ourselves ready to a monocurrency, which is ZiG. I think the SI says up to 2030, but we're starting to hear this noise, and this was coming directly from John Mishavanu. So clearly, they're setting a path to ZiG usage. What do we make of it? Maybe Rufaro, you can start.
We've heard this many times before, by the way, over the last 5 years. This talk of a monocurrency has been incessant. But from that perspective, it's not new. It's not news. They've been quite consistent in making such statements. I think what's new is that fuel will be available in ZiG. You'll be able to buy your passport in ZiG, which I think is long overdue, right? If the claim that ZiG is going to be stable and fungible is true, then why can't you buy fuel with ZiG? Why can't you pay for your passport with ZiG? This should always have been the case. What I think is missing from all this talk is action, right? Because if we are serious about the local currency dominating the market, it must start to persuade the market. It must start making sense for participants to transact in ZiG. And we haven't seen any action taken in this regard. Like, the low-hanging fruit for me, for example, would be to remove IMTT from ZiG transactions and maintain it on USD transactions. Then now you have an incentive to transact more in ZiG. But we're not actually seeing these concrete action steps to help ZiG regain market share from US dollars. If anything, what we've seen as, to the government's credit, the local currency has been stable for the last 6 months or so, but it hasn't gained any market share. So what's going to change between now and 2030 that's going to make us all of a sudden move from 80-90% of our transactions in US dollars to 100% of our transactions in ZiG. I'm missing something there.
Well, the cohesive nature of government. But anyway, let's get to you, Ranga. And my question to you really centers around we behave as if the parent market doesn't exist. I mean, if you're on the streets, you know that the rate right now is trading at 40. That's what the vendors, that's what the informal sector is using.
Oh, really? Is it that high?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the official rate is at 26. So if you try and introduce fuel in local currency, it's going to be priced at 26. And yet for the fuel companies to then get the currency and the fuel back, they'll have to trade at 40 or above that, because then suddenly you have this surge of demand for US dollars, because then they can't deal with US dollars. The question is, what's the central bank missing? Or maybe what are we missing? Maybe they see something that we don't see. Have they factored this into their analysis and into their understanding of what's actually happening? That we do have a vibrant power market rate that's actually trading.
Yeah, I think I'll start off with sort of debunking Shumba's assertion that the ZiG has been stable. The ZiG is not there. It's not stable. It doesn't exist. Like in terms of in the numbers that we would talk of stability if it was available and people could freely exchange it for USD or whatever. It's just not there. The question that I would ask all of us, I don't want an answer, and even the crew, is when was the last time you used ZiG, like for transacting? So whenever you get some ZiG into your account, first thing that you want to do is to get rid of it, right? Either by just going to buy whatever you need or exchanging it for US dollars. So it's just not there, and it's not operating at the same sort of level with the US dollar. So we can't talk of stability, because the moment, that's why even on the part of government, they have not been paying most of their creditors. They are worried that if we inject ZiG liquidity onto the market, they'll be haywire. And that's not sustainable, right? So when the headline says RBZ ready for 100% ZiG, what are they saying? It's not like RBZ has got a say in this thing. It's the market. So even if they wake up tomorrow and say, you will not be allowed to use USDs, people still use them. Unless they've got huge they've created enough capacity in the prisons to, lock up everyone, which is not practical.
So we'll start with you when you make statements.
But that will not change anything. Those people still transact.
Yeah.
So look,
to your point, they did arrest people before, and that didn't change much. People still transacted.
Yeah. So look, the efforts that they've been trying to make are understandable. They're dealing with the issues of the supply of the ZiG, but the confidence issues, they are way off the mark. They haven't really done even 5% of what they need to do to restore confidence. Excuse me. So even when you speak to some people, even in the RBZ, they sort of acknowledge that confidence is such a big issue. And you don't deal with confidence by using decrease. It's actually, if you do that, you get negative outcomes. So all that they have to do is, since now they're saying that their stash of reserve or US dollars or whatever, convertible commodities has been increasing, just put it on the market in the banks and say, you know what? Anyone who thinks they want US dollars, just go to your bank, all right? And you pay 26 or 30 or 40. You do that for a week, for a month or whatever. But when you make that, you challenge them to do that, they say, no, you can't do that because everyone will just dump all the ZiG. So if they are so confident about this currency, why would they dump it? It's not happening in Zambia. It's not happening in other neighboring countries. So the confidence issue.
So what are we missing? So what is John Mushavanu trying to say to us?
I don't know. Ask him, because it doesn't make sense to me.
Wait, we're certainly missing something. I think. Look, okay, I've got a thesis, could be wrong. I think that the state wants to retain the power to print, right? They feel that it's useful to be able to print from time to time, which is why they're not playing open cards, right? Like what Ranga is suggesting. Because the easiest way to engender confidence in this market to say, hey, you know what, guys, if you want to transact at 40, it's perfectly legal, carry on. We think fair value is at 26, and we will give you as many US dollars at 26 as you want, no questions asked, right? That's, and because markets are very responsive. There's no one who's going to pay 40 for something that's available at 26, right? It just doesn't, that's just a dumb trade, right? And if you have high conviction that you've got enough US dollars to convert at 26, then you shouldn't have a problem. You should actually, if people want to come and pay you 40 for something that you would sell at 26, you should be delighted, right? Because firstly, you get more liquidity out of the market at 40 than you do at 26, right? And those people are permanently out of the market, right? Because those are the naysayers, the non-believers, right? Because they'll be the first to come and say, hey, you know what? Give me money at 40. Give me money at 35. Give me money, So I it's always vexed me, that they haven't, if they strongly believe that, the fair value is at 26, why do you care if their pockets of the market trading at 40?
Okay, well, now let's get into the news. Miners and RBZ in crush talks over Forex retention. So the Chamber of Mines has come out very strongly that this 30% is not sustainable. The RBZ keeps on insisting that that's the policy. In fact, heading to a monocurrency. What's your take on this? And, there's this issue of RBZ not paying out the actual 30% in ZiG. That is actually not happening. They're just being given IOUs. That the big miners are actually being given IOUs. So that liquidity, to your point, is just not there because they are going out of their way to withdraw that liquidity from the market. But you have the miners complaining. What are your thoughts?
I think the miners are not reading the policy signals properly. Mm-hmm. Because the RBZ has been on record saying this number is actually going to keep increasing, especially as they're pushing with this de-dollarization move. Mm-hmm. So it's on 30 today. Mm-hmm. We've got a higher chance of having that number at 35 than at 25 in the next 6-12 months. Mm-hmm. Right? So I don't know what they need to do to convince them to reverse it. But I think for now, really, it's maybe they just need to push for the surrenders to be done at a price which is closer to market price. And number one. Then number two, then they should be free to have the funds and do what they want with their funds when the funds are in their account. So I think those are easier kind of propositions to make than maybe the one where they're expecting the surrenders will be reduced from 30.
I think Ranga, you're misreading the miners. I think the miners are being politically correct. The challenge is not that the retention is at 30% and not 25 or 20. Or if I was a miner and ZiG was fully fungible with US dollars at 26, I wouldn't care what the retention was. If it was 100%, I wouldn't care, because if I need to import consumables, I just go to the bank, here's the invoice, and it's paid, right? If I, if I have talent that would rather be paid in US dollars than in local currency because they're an expat from Australia or whatever, it's fine. I'll just go to the bank. I've got this employee that prefers to be paid in US dollars. Please convert the ZiG to X amount. There's no problem, right? The challenge is that, firstly, that 30% retention, they're not even getting the ZiG, right? They're getting an IOU, right? And when they do get the ZiG, they're not fully fungible, all right? So, and that's why they're complaining, right? Because and to me, what it speaks to is this challenge with the ZiG, that it's actually, you said it's not there. I think it's got some severe challenges, which is why it's less than 10% of the transactions. And Tinashe has raised this concern before about the nostro balances. So I think we've got a problem with the formal banking sector, and that's why the National Mattress Bank continues to be the biggest bank, and cash continues to be king.
True. Formalization efforts face headwinds. So, the RBZ Treasury have been really, and ZIMRA have been really pushing hard to formalize businesses, SMEs. But we've seen Delta coming out and making a proposal that the threshold for VAT registration should really be above 60,000 a year and not the 20,000 a year, and saying, it's creating unnecessary gridlocks. We haven't really seen government. I mean, government have been trying, okay, so let me read it out. Authorities introduced route to market measures that weren't meant to starve off informal sector players from accessing manufactured goods unless they've acquired VAT certification. But we know that that's very difficult. What are your thoughts on that? Really targeting the informal sector. What do we need to do to bring it back to the formal sector? Or should we just accept it? Because I think what Delta is saying is, guys, this is our reality. The threshold for VAT registration should be above, and then let's just allow these players to play the game. Because if we don't do it, they'll just import from Zambia or elsewhere and just continue trading.
So I think the extent, there's so much overregulation. So I'm actually surprised that, that story article seems to suggest that ZIMRA of all organizations are really trying to promote formalization. I mean, the heavy-handedness of ZIMRA actually promotes informalization. The same can be said of the RBZ, especially through their financial intelligence unit. So when they start moving around, whipping people because they are, like before the new SI, you would not be allowed to price using any exchange rate besides the formal exchange rate. Such measures don't encourage formality. It makes it very difficult, harder, and burdensome for businesses to operate formally. I think we actually have got a more chance of seeing more formal businesses informalizing. Informalizing, if not the entire operations, but a piece of your operations. So that at least you sort of run away from that wide net of regulations that are there. So look, the economy hasn't been growing. Oh, it reminds me of the conversation we had. Okay, we have had macroeconomic challenges, right? And that's why the tax revenues, even after adding another line, but
aren't they 7 billion, north of 7 billion now, which is all-time high? Aren't we doing fantastically well?
I'm still to be convinced. to be honest,
let's so ZIMRA actually,
so you can't solve it by forcing businesses to.
ZIMRA is actually defending itself for its aggressive tax enforcement, and they're saying actually we're operating within the confines of the law. So we're not being aggressive. No, we're doing what the law says. But they're using Delta as an example, because that Delta was slapped with a tax assessment bill with additional taxation of 74.8 million. And this had to do with tax where ZIMRA says the currency in which you're trading in is what you must pay your tax in. And yet, previously, I think Delta had paid tax using Zim dollar, and then now they've been slapped with a tax invoice. Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem if the currency was the same, right? Or if there was an exchange rate around the currency and it was, value for value. But it turns out the reason why ZIMRA is doing this because it turns out in Zim dollars, it's nothing. But in US dollars, certainly it's something because there was a heavy depreciation that happened with the currency. And that's why ZIMRA is going after. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look,
ZIMRA is working within the confines of the law.
The spirit or the letter or the spirit?
You tell us. Do a greater.
Look, I think there's a limit to how much enforcement is going to yield higher revenue, and essentially the informal sector is not taxed. The formal sector is taxed. So, and this is the reason why the informal sector has been stealing market share from the formal sector, because it's just easier to do business in the informal sector. And ultimately, if you extrapolate this trend to its natural end point, it's significantly lower government revenue. Whether, because the number of players that you'll have to audit and enforce the law is just going to keep shrinking, right? So I don't think that's the solution. I don't think making the taxes higher is the solution either. What you want to do is you want these businesses in the formal sector to thrive. So if you're turning over $100 and whatever you're paying in VAT will double if you go from $100 to $200, right? If you double your payroll, whatever you're paying in payroll taxes also doubles, right? Like you don't have to change any of the tax heads or introduce new ones. If the formal sector is growing and thriving, it will contribute more. And so, and that's what that's the X that we should be solving for. How do we empower or create a conducive environment for the formal sector to thrive and grow aggressively? And I think but I when I hear these pronouncements from Treasury and its various agencies, I don't think that they're in that mindset. They're in this mindset of, we're taking Y amount from Tinashe. How can we get 2Y?
Yeah. Okay, we need to move on because it's already time up. But let's talk about the tobacco season, which is about to come to an end. 52% increase in volume year on year. Good.
Of course, very good.
Fantastic.
Very good, especially when you then look at the distribution of that.
But why do you care about the distribution?
No, okay. For me, I care.
Socialist.
So, no. Even from a purely economic point of view, so the distribution, it means disposable incomes. Increased like across the board, and then it means, in fact, just read whether it's the Delta report, the AFDIS, or all these companies. What are they attributing their growth in revenues on? So it's a good tobacco season, a good.
Have you applied your mind to the counterfactual?
I'm just dealing with.
No, give us the counterfactual.
So you've got 120,000 registered tobacco growers, and you've got record tobacco production, record revenues, and you are delighted that they distributed over these 120,000 people. Now, the counterfactual is rewind time, go back to 2002. Imagine land reform never happened. And the guys who were doing 200 million kgs a year in 2002 kept reinvesting and growing and improving their yields and productivity. Tobacco farming nation. Yeah. Because we had
we're now the third largest.
Where would we actually be if you extrapolate the productivity and performance of that cohort over 25 or 25 odd years? Instead of celebrating 400 million kgs this year, we might be celebrating a billion kgs. Right, we might be celebrating 2.5 times what we've done now.
I choose to be forward-looking, so I'm looking at the 120,000 and say right now these are not, they are not getting as much support, and they are not like trading farmers. I know. So if you extrapolate, 20 years down the line, these guys have become smarter and they are one of them.
Highly
If they just
mechanized.
double their efforts.
Let's talk about VFX stages a bullish rally over the same period. So first, we've seen a 232% increase in volume trades as investors seek USD exposure. What's actually happening there?
Is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct. But so like even if you have a 1,000% increase, right? If you're starting from a very small number,
Without some corporate, but without some
no,
corporate transactions,
It says turnover.
without some corporate transactions.
Turnover is increased to $73 million US dollars from 22 million US dollars.
no, that's true. But remember, that's tiny compared to the peak of the market.
No, that's not the point. The point is that growth? Are we seeing that growth? And what is it signaling?
So there's quite a lot of corporate action. There's it's not that there's so firstly, I'll make the case that the market valuations that you see on the ZSE or the VFX, they're not actually a function. They're not a function of a great price discovery mechanism that's working as it should. It's literally where, I mean, yes, there is, it is a reflection of where supply is meeting demand, but the volumes are so low. So
but the turnover is telling us it's 73 million.
Yes,
but just in this first half, compared to 22 million that happened first half of last year.
So you're talking about it in absolute numbers. So when I say the turnover is low, I'm speaking in terms of, in the context of when you look at the how many times, like in very developed, deep liquid markets.
I totally get that, but I'm just making the case that it could very well be 22 million this year.
Yeah,
but that it's 73 million.
Yes, but I'm still saying if you ask the question, what percentage?
Look, I'll have to look at the numbers, but I would hazard a guess that these are like corporate transactions,
corporate action,
big blocks that are changing hands. Because on a
but it's still activity.
It's
anyway it will be recorded as activity.
It's activity, but I'm looking at it and say, okay, on a daily basis, outside of it, because we might have one transaction that comes and hit you with
I don't care
20 million. No.
Just that the activity has happened.
Yes,
it's an increase.
But you're
now talking about the quality.
So it's not just the quality. So if a corporate action has occurred, what is the likelihood that maybe in the next quarter and a corporate action of that size would happen again?
No. Look, I'm with Tinashe on this. But
if shares are changing hands in big blocks, it's just one transaction.
Look, I'm with Tinashe on this.
Okay, so you say next half, it's likely to come down,
coming back to
because it's not a consistent.
It's not consistent.
No.
So the number that I'm actually
that's a fair enough. Yeah. No, that's a fair enough argument. Let's hear.
So if you've got 100 shares in issue, right? If in a calendar year you trade 500 shares or 1,000 shares, you're trading multiples of the number of shares in issue, right? And this is what very deep liquid markets do, right? So even though the number is a significant improvement from 22 million, right? As in terms of the turnover of that of the shares in issue, these are still very low numbers, right? Yeah. So you can make the point that this is a significant improvement, which is correct, and while still acknowledging that it's still a very small.
We all know Zimbabwe is a very tiny economy, so everything that is happening is in minuscule levels.
Because if you think about 73 million for half a year,
that I want to share with you, which is really depressing me, that on the VFX,
please don't depress us in the audience.
On the VFX, which is supposedly a US dollar exchange, which was created partly because they wanted foreigners to be playing there. Foreign activity was only 1%. And to put this number in its proper context, even at the height of hyperinflation, Zim was doing like 30% foreign activity. The best we've achieved was almost 63% in 2014.
Well, it just tells us that foreigners don't believe.
Yeah, but so here's another statistic.
So that's why I can't celebrate your 73 million.
Tinashe, let me contextualize the 74 million, right? The VFX market cap is circa 1.25, 1.3 billion, depending on which exchange rate you use and which where you cut off, right? So 74 million in half a year, if you annualize that, call it 150,
150, yeah.
Right? That's hardly, 12-13% of the entire market cap of the
that
exchange.
point I get.
Changing hands.
The point is, it could have been 22 million last year.
Yeah. So let's not celebrate mediocrity, guys.
No, we're not celebrating mediocrity. I wanted to find out why that activity is happening. Where is it coming from?
It's one
or
corporate action.
If it's a signal of better times to come.
No.
A signal of better times to come is when you start seeing the foreign number creeping up.
Okay.
When Ranga and I are away in New York,
Yes,
doing
raising
a
money.
road show to get foreigners to pile into VFX, then
That's a signal. But if you are seeing us here every Friday doing Friday drinks,
there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard it first and you've heard it, yeah. If you see the guys, it tells you what's actually happening on the capital markets and also what's happening with the Zimbabwean economy. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, have yourself a wonderful evening. We certainly are. And have yourself a wonderful week ahead. Cheers.
Cheers.
cheers.